I'd like to call to order the meeting of Tuesday, September 19th, 2017, being 7 o'clock in the evening. Council of the Borough of Duncannon for our regular September 2017 meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone to please rise for a moment of silence, followed by Mr. Adams, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and you may be seated. I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you for taking an interest in the happenings of your town, of the borough, and welcome the secretary for your roll call.
Mr. Crothermel.
Here.
Mr. Epley.
Present.
Mr. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Nace.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Kirkhoff.
Here.
Ms. Young.
Here.
Mayor Capuana.
Here.
Solicitor DeSinger.
Here.
And engineer.
I have not heard from
I have Greg is getting back tonight from, he was deployed for Harvey down in Houston. So he will be back in Philadelphia tonight. He'll be here tomorrow for the DEP visit, but won't be at the meeting tonight. Vicki had another commitment. Didn't know. Greg was hoping to get back Sunday, but did not.
If we have anything for the engineer tonight other than from their written report, we'll be sure that it's forwarded tomorrow. Just a reminder for everyone, if you have electronic devices, including cell phones and pagers, please be sure they're on vibrate or silent. So on then, sorry? I just report for a moment. Move on to item number 5 on the agenda. We have minutes before us since last week from the August 15, 2017 meeting in draft form. Is there any wish for action on those minutes?
One correction, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Second page, second, I guess call it paragraph down, third line, it says the Chestnut Street Water Project should be inserted in there. That's all I have.
Anything else in the minutes as presented?
On page 3, the final paragraph there should be National Night Out versus Nation Night Out.
There is that. Very good. At the bottom, National Night Out for Nation Night Out.
That's all I have.
Anything else? Any wish for action on the minutes?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Crowthorne, second by Ms. Young to approve the minutes as presented with the 2 corrections noted. Any further discussion? All those in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a first of 2 public comment sessions on the agenda. If we can have the signing document. Thank you, Kevin. We have Sarah Hoffman of Mountain View Road, Shermansdale. You did indicate whether you wanted to speak or not. Welcome, Sarah. Erica Sloan of 720 North High Street. You did indicate you wish to speak. Erica.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I am for allowing the chickens. Also, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but I have a cat problem. They are everywhere, and I don't know if there's something that the borough can do or if there are regulations in place that people are letting their cats out of their house. I know for an instance, my neighbor, they don't always keep their cats in the house, but they're peeing on everything, spraying my deck. I mean, I have feces all over my backyard from them, and it's out of control. It's like they're everywhere. So I don't know if something can be done. The next thing that I wanted to just mention was the potholes in the alleyway behind North High Street. If there's something that could be done with them.
Which alleyway?
The alleyway right behind North High and in between the sled works.
So Apple Tree Alley.
Yeah. They're getting worse like every day. So I don't know if something can be done about them, but that's all I had.
I can respond to the potholes. We actually discussed that briefly this evening. I know Jeff with the Streets Committee has a lot of work ahead of him for the street projects. And we do have a representative from PennDOT. They have a local what, LTAP,
Local Technical Assistance Program.
Coming in to help our staff, including the foreman, to create kind of a road plan to determine what roads are priority for repair before we lose them. And also, of course, working with the funding we have to move forward. So that's already on the radar. The chickens, we've had a lot of discussion on that at this level and at the council, our committee level. And as far as the cats go, I don't know a good answer for that. Chris, do you have anything?
The only thing I know is that they are a problem a lot of places, and I've noticed more recently.
Yeah.
The feral cats, I'm assuming they're feral because
I don't know. I don't think
well,
they're feral.
I think a lot of them are. There may be a combination. And,
Yeah.
it's really tough because, even if we know, I mean, we'd have to know whose cat it is to cite them for not controlling the animal. And cats are generally not licensed, so even if we catch the cat, being able to tell whose it is,
Yeah.
we'll look at it. And the other thing, and I don't know which committee you'd want, but we can take a look at, there's some programs out there for feral cats. I can't tell you that any of them are great options. There's pros and cons to all of them, but there are programs that you can look at. So if we have a committee that wants to take on that issue, we can take a look at what the options might be and decide if any of them are feasible for us.
Hey, Chris, your committee's not really doing much.
Yeah, we'll take that, we can shade tree.
There was
Circle of life.
You would have been on council, there
Let's
was
chase the
a look into
chickens.
programs that did that, and there was a program that was set up that we were part of, but I don't know
The
whether.
Humane Society had a program that
It was a
was
tribal
always
leadership.
very, very expensive.
Yeah,
I know Penn Township had participated a couple of years. I don't know that the borough did.
I'll look into there's some volunteer groups now that have
Yeah,
got.
I know there's SNAP, the spay and neuter assistant
The
program or something
the
like
problem with most of those is that the whole theory is that we lure them to an area by feeding them, catch them, neuter them, and then they won't reproduce. That's a nice theory if you can keep them all sterile, but the whole mix isn't going to be, and you're going to lure more the cats that are breeding to the food also. So
Right.
it doesn't, I don't know if there's statistical evidence to show what kind of impact it has, but we can look into that and
I don't know if I'm allowed to catch them humanely in like a trap and take them to the Humane Society if they're on my deck.
Have you talked to your neighbor yet about it? Have you said anything to him?
Yeah, but they say, oh, they just get out and then I can't find them.
So are they like claiming them as their cat, is what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
It's theirs.
At least 2 of them are theirs. There's a couple other ones that I've never seen before that all of a sudden just appeared in my backyard. Now, they'll be on my porch. I'll come out in the morning and there they are.
I
I'd
believe-
scare them off.
if you want to file a codes
Yeah,
complaint,
I was gonna say.
if Tony can, make that link to the cat that's out running wild to that owner, then he can file a notice and because that is, they have to be kept under control under the borough ordinances.
I hate to be a tattletale, but you're peeing on my porch.
They're-
Like, it's gross.
They can be a problem.
Yeah, so.
Any animals running wild in bunches can cause a nuisance. And,
Right.
cats, wild dogs.
And
I'm
before,
surprised, is anybody here to talk tonight about the turkey vultures? Okay,
Mine's still young.
another one, so.
before you would approach the Humane Society, you may want to contact them. I believe that part of the Humane Society program, at least in its former form, was that the borough had to be enrolled in their program, which again was a couple $1,000s if I recall correctly,
Okay.
for any resident to be able to take animals. And there was a limit on number of animals. At one point, they weren't even accepting cats even for member.
Yeah, they're trying out.
It still wasn't free either.
Right.
They still had to pay a considerable amount.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Maybe I should just try and talk to my neighbors again.
That's always, I believe, a good first step.
Yeah, better option, but
Anything else?
no, that's it.
Sophia, Jackie, you can indicate that you want to speak. Okay. Mike Wolfersberger. Okay. Mike Rogan.
Chris, did anybody in your meetings and stuff comment about the ratio of skunks in town to the chickens? Was there any discussion about that?
There was not.
That's something I was just curious, because we do have quite a problem with skunks. I know we have cats, but we've had cats for years, but I've never seen skunks like this.
It seems like it's worse this year
I have noticed
than
that.
ever.
I've caught 10 in the past 5 weeks. This is outrageous.
I've smelled about that. Just
Yeah,
when I never did all the
They're,
other.
they're just abundant.
Yeah.
So I, just something like, I haven't been able to make it to your meeting, so I'm sorry to bring it up now,
No,
but
that's
just something to throw out there.
It might.
And then also, was there any plans on what would do if there was an epidemic, like say of a disease or something like that? Say if one of the flocks got sick, is there any standing municipal plans like to handle a situation like that?
There isn't now, but that would be covered if we adopt the ordinances coming in.
Okay.
The only thing to fall back on right now is I've talked to the people at the Department of Agriculture, and they said that our ordinance has to be within their current requirements, like we can't go above the state requirements or things like that. So it'll coincide with whatever the state already has in place.
There would be something covering
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
Wonderful.
The borough has an all hazards plan, which is kind of a one-size-fits-all plan, pretty generic in form. But a lot of those issues would either fall on the piggyback of a regional or state plan to the Department of Agriculture or Department of Health, depending on what the situation was, what the outbreak was.
Great. Then one other thing too, seeing as Wolfensberger won't talk. Chris has notified us about the IT. We got emails from him, and I want to thank you for inviting us to play. Didn't get a chance to talk to you because you're busy at meetings, but we did go through the buildings and surveyed them. The only reason I'm bringing this up is you guys are going to have to make a decision on the shop. The shop is an electrical nightmare. You actually have 3 services coming into that building. So at this point, the way it is wired, you cannot back that up. Not feasible, cost effectively wise. So there has to be corrections done to your electrical system, at least eliminating 1 panel. And also, whoever was involved in the design should be hung. You've got electric 3-phase heaters over there that are not the right voltage for the electrical distribution system, and you wonder why you keep burning them out. I can't believe, I would love to see what the bills are in that building. It must be horrendous. So a decision is going to have to be made by council as far as like what kind of corrections you want to do this. Some of the recommendations would be eliminating those electric heaters, put gas heaters in. At that point, you could completely eliminate one of the services. If you don't, if you want to keep the heaters, you would have to change the actual transformers, which we have the capability of doing that, but it'd have to be changed to 208 service as opposed to 240 volt. And at that time, you might have to upgrade the system to just a little bit larger panel. But that all has to be corrected before you can put any generator in. So I just want to throw that out in case you want to take actions. I don't know what your time schedule is. Like I said, we haven't had an opportunity to discuss any of this with you, so this is all new. But we want to at least bring that part out so that you can go forward with it if you need to make any decisions on what you want to do.
So when you say the shop, you mean the newest building by
Yeah,
Forrest?
the
Okay,
newest
okay.
building that everybody patted their backs when they built it and everything else.
Not everybody.
Everybody, enough people. Enough people. It is, it's an electrical nightmare. It's really a shame.
The plan had been to make sure that the generator will also provide at least base power so that they'd have basic accessibility, their doors would work, lights and so forth. We'll have to look at this when I meet with Mike and then take a look at what would be involved and decide if that's, which way we recommend to go.
Depending on how significant it is, perhaps that's something that in your last 3 months here, that the facilities can be involved with as well.
And that could be something too, maybe, that if it is something bigger, if it costs more, we could do that after the generator, and kind of like, I would assume
That
you
might
could
be
put the
possible.
generator in for this building and then attach that one later, correct?
Yes,
capacity.
you can take care of this building and even the small garage.
Yeah.
And the way we're looking at it, now that's without talking to generator people yet. That's just from what we put together and from what we know on.
Well, we could get a generator, because we talked about having a generator cover this building and both those buildings. We could get that now and then hook up that building at a later time.
Whatever your time frame is.
Whatever
you're
your
allowed
time
to do.
frame is, but at this point, unless the generator people discuss it, I wouldn't go with one generator. And at this point, like I said, I would recommend two for sure. Particularly for the sizes that you would, you would be humongous for one as opposed to two smaller ones.
Would you do one for this building and then one for those two?
One for, actually, we were looking at these two buildings, one, and then the garage, because the garage, if you're gonna be an outage, and you're gonna have people in and out, you're gonna need your compressors, as well as, that is the biggest load, well, no, this building has the biggest load on it. But, and that's if the heaters aren't running. But load-wise, they're pretty much the same. So we probably look at like two identical generators. But like I said, that we would allow up to the generator people to make a decision on that. Because if you put one in, then you got distribution. So you'd be digging up things, running, you would end up spending more on the install than you would just with two, as putting in one. At least from what we're surveying so far.
Where we've got to be careful is if we try to do it on the EIP, that's all got to be targeted at IT. So the primary IT structures in this building. So if we can do the shops as kind of a secondary to this building, that may be doable. And Chris could probably speak more to that offline or the council level or committee level. But I know that the mission of those funds that we've already secured is IT, not compressors and door openers.
Let me meet with Mike and Mike next week, and then once I get their full report, I can check then with the state and see exactly what we're restricted to, what we're not restricted to, and we can look at everything, and then we go from there.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Tyler Schultz and Tyler Harrison didn't indicate they wish to speak. Welcome, thank you for being here. Anyone else that didn't sign in that wishes to speak? Pass that down, thank you. Let's move on to item number 7, appointments, resignations, correspondence, proposals, associate action forms. I've got 2 pieces of correspondence. The first is a letter from Sophia Capuana. Sophia's been here, you've seen her at a lot of meetings, she's John's daughter, indicating interest in the junior council program. We did have some discussion as kind of a personnel matter tonight at the personnel meeting on this, and I think our goal is going to be to publicize the junior council program over the next 60 days or so, and ask that applications be submitted by about a week before our December meeting, and then make appointments of candidates we feel appropriate as a council to take office in January. So I think if anyone has candidates, if anyone has interest or questions, we haven't formalized any kind of process or program, but I think we at least want to get the word out that we're looking for interest. Letters of interest can be submitted. So Sophia's is the first. If anyone wants to see it, let me know I have it. I think we can start to move that forward. John has some background information on the program and kind of a template to start to develop that. So if there's no objection, I think the personnel committee can take that on and formulate that through October, November, and try to be ready in December for it. The second one, I'm not going to read the whole thing, is a letter from DEP dated September 11th, 2017. I'm going to read one sentence in particular. Based on the department's review, Duncannon may cease lead service line replacement. Jim, based on the department's review, Duncannon may cease lead service line replacement. A letter dated September 11th from DEP from Andrea Stewart, indicating that both of our testing sessions in January to June 2017 and July to December 2017, both of those data from these monitoring periods demonstrated that lead and copper analysis results are below the actionable levels of 0.015 milligrams per liter and 1.3 milligrams per liter respectively. So that's all good news. After some discussion last month.
Can I see that one?
Sure. So that was my favorite correspondence. I'm sorry, Sophia. I have no other correspondence. Does anyone else have anything under item number 7? Move on to item number 8, general reports to the borough engineer. We do have a written report front and back from Pannoni. Is there any question or correspondence back to Pannoni tomorrow when Greg comes in for the water system review? Do you have any insight or comments? Did you see their report? Would you like to?
Tomorrow. Greg puts it in, he makes sure it's good.
Yep.
That's how the game's played.
Anything else for the engineering report? Move on then to public works. Mr. Hope.
Does everybody have a copy of water and wastewater reports? I don't need to itemize review. I will highlight at the wastewater plant, it's not even noted on here, but the influent pump, number 1, that was the original one we replaced a month or so ago. First-time company, came yesterday. The pump is installed, it is wired, ready to go. They're coming back with Flight, the manufacturer, Friday to test run it and make sure that it is warranted and everything is done up to snuff. So, in the event, we got all 3 pumps ready to run, so as of Friday. And if there is an issue, Flight's going to be on site, they'll get it taken care of. So, not that it was forgotten, but it was contracted out, that work got done earlier, because originally, I think Greg had said October 3rd or something. We came in earlier, they called, said, are you ready? We said, we're here. That is done and installed, so that's good news there.
Did it go better than last time? Was it installed?
Yeah, they're done. I mean, they arrived 10 o'clock yesterday, were gone by 2, came back today to put the finishing touches, and they were gone by lunch. So it went much quicker, much faster. So, yes, so that's good. In the past month, we did have some issues with alarms, only to find out that it was a float, a minimal cost object that failed, causing the pumps to continually run, emptying the wet well. Then they would airlock, and after about 2 days of resetting the program and running things by hand, we figured out that it was a stupid float, cost maybe $150. But so that is now replaced and everything is functioning again. You did mention briefly about a meeting tomorrow with the ED on the water side. I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, we were encouraging some representative from council.
The correspondence is sent to you, did invite you,
Yes. What time is that?
9 o'clock.
Okay. Okay.
That will be interesting.
Is anyone else able or interested in attending if I'm unable?
I can if nobody else can.
I can be here, Greg, can you make me too?
I will do my best, but Roger can be here for sure.
9 o'clock.
Yeah, up at the wells,
Up at the standby.
at the mixed building,
We're gonna meet up there at 9.
yes.
Coffee and donuts.
Only if you bring them.
If
I already
Christine,
did that.
I'll ask Christine if she'll bring them.
I'd like to see Christine.
She likes you.
I know she does. You tell her I want coffee and donuts, she'll bring them.
Wow.
Yeah,
This
make
went
sure you
south
get that in
quick.
the minutes.
Yeah.
So we'll see what that generates coming out of that meeting. I'm not quite sure what to expect. I will say that we are moving forward. We had 2 pre-construction meetings on the Chestnut Street project. Their intent was to start digging this Monday. We've requested that pushed out 1 week because we want to exercise valves starting on High Street, working our way up, just to make sure things properly closed so that the contractors can do the work. We've had records showing that some of the valves in the line of work have leaked or are possibly leaking. So we want to exercise them hopefully Thursday, and if they are leaking or failing, we got next week to fix it before they pull in on site and try to do the work and delay them any more than possible. So by next meeting, we will have some of that Chestnut Street project. It will be well underway. We'll cross our fingers and hope we don't experience too many low water, dirty water. I'm not sure what to expect. I know what the maps say. But previous leak detections, I'm not 100% confident in what the maps are showing, so we'll cross our fingers and we'll go with what we can find and make it work, so.
And one of the things that Streets and Utilities will be getting, once Mike gets the estimate on it, and he's having a little trouble because Muzzy's been out sick from Rural Water, but Rural Water does offer a mapping service, and I think we really need an updated map of our water system, because the reason we had the second pre-construction meeting was just to talk about exactly where are the pipes, you know, trying to make sure that we do this in a way that will hopefully avoid any boil water advisories. We don't expect any to be townwide. There may be some for just a handful of customers that are connected on Chestnut Street, but we're hoping to avoid that as well. But we don't know. We don't know if the valves are where they say they are. We don't know, you know, if when they exercise them, what kind of shape they're going to be in. So it's going to be, you know, a kind of a.
That mapping process was at least started or at least discussed a couple years ago. Pannoni was going to take the lead on that at that time, so make sure that Rural Water is in touch with Pannoni and of course Pessy to get whatever data, whatever notes, whatever comments they have. Because I think it's been well documented that there are certainly variations from the published maps versus reality.
Well, I'll check with Greg then too, because we're just getting a quote from Rural Water, because I noticed in their one publication they send us that they offer that service, and just happened to see the ad right after we had the meeting and talked about the problems with it, so it seems like a good option since we use them for a lot, but.
There may have been resolution, and I might have missed it. There was a significant water loss last month. Did we identify that, or?
I think so. We're down to 27 versus 42.
Right.
41, 42. We found that McGuire Ford. And after the meeting, I sort of knew about it because Mike was questioning me, hey, have you ever heard of this meter? All I'm familiar with was a census style, and I was like, no, I don't know where that meter came from. That meter's been replaced. It was not installed for a full month. So I think that the reason we're still seeing the 27% is we didn't go through the full cycle yet. It was put on, so it's got partial water reader need, because I keep checking daily what our production is, and we're still way below what we were prior to fixing the reservoir. We might have a Saturday where we do 140,000, but then on Monday it's 90. So our previous average before the reservoir was 133, and we're down 122. So we're not, if we had a leak, it would constantly and probably growing. It wouldn't go up one day and come down the next, so.
And the meter read at the car wash was 200 gallons for the month last month. So it's obviously
At a
wrong.
car wash.
So it's obviously wrong. It was broken.
Okay. That's good news. I mean, it's good news
Yeah.
that we determined where it was. 42, I was going to ask the same question about the 27.
Yeah.
Still better than 42.
So we didn't go through the whole cycle.
In another 30 days.
Installed, we only got a partial.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Anything for the water sewer operator?
I guess we didn't get the smoke test yet either.
No, I had that planned last week or the week before. The same week that I was scheduling to do that is when the pump went down and we were trying to keep the plant running and figure out, we lost 2 days in troubleshooting, and yeah, so hopefully here hurricanes pass by and the equipment's ready. We just need it to stay dry for a day or two and then make the announcement. I don't know if we need 24, 48 hours, but we should make a public announcement before we just start blowing smoke in the holes and people think their house is on fire, so. Because it will happen.
Anything else? Anything else for the operator? Thank you, Kevin. Move on then to letter C under general reports, the solicitor, Mr. Disinger.
Speaking of blowing smoke.
Nicely done.
Two areas we've been working on. One is the trash bin. If you'll recall, I more or less promised that you would have it in your hands for looking at this meeting. It turned out that was a little enthusiastic. We did have it completed and out, and it'll be for your next meeting. When are the bids due, Chris?
The bids are due back the 2nd of October.
So So that's in hand for your decision.
I thought you promised that we would have the RFP to get it out, so I thought you were right on time. I didn't,
Oh, all right.
your confession
That's
was not
fine.
necessary, but.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm always telling my clients, you have a right to remain silent, you know. My plan was to have it back for this, and you even said, don't we think that's a little, short, and you were right. Okay.
Don't tell him that.
Yeah, okay. The other thing is we met with Josh about the conservation easement, worked over language and programs in that document pretty thoroughly, I believe, and sent Josh off to revise the agreement for additional review. I had some problems with it. So that's in hand. Josh has promised to get that back to me within the near future, so that it can move along here with this council. That's the plan. So we will see where we go. So he at least voiced, I think, mostly solutions, if you will, to the problems that I had. So there didn't seem to be any drop dead.
It will not come back to council until Bill is happy with it.
Yeah.
And when Bill feels it's addressed all the concerns that he's heard, in particular the concerns about financial commitments in the future, if we can't reach that in the negotiations with them, it won't even come back to council.
Excellent.
All right, and that's what I told Josh my marching orders were. That we had to completely limit financial liability to this borough as a result of this agreement. So he understands. And that was put to him as a drop dead. So I have. Thank you, sir.
Anything for the solicitor? Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
See a fire company shirt, but I don't see a fire company representative. Does anyone have anything for the fire department? Mayor Capital.
Just a junior council program, we talked a little bit about that already. Picnic, we had discussed a mayor's picnic. I think we were a little aggressive on the date and looking at it, we're gonna postpone it to probably springtime. Roger and I will work together with Chris and DJ and try and figure out the right timing of it, maybe a kickoff to Parks and Rec season. It was conflicting. The Pumpkin Fest is going on in Enola. There's a Little Buffalo Festival the same weekend, so we were all kind of getting feedback that it might not be well attended. So it was a good idea just to postpone it. And then I did attend the Strategic Action Plan Committee on September 7th for the PSAB. Very interesting. It was 5 hours at Hershey Hotel. They had good food. And really just to kind of give the highlight of it, ultimately helping drive their plan from 18 to 2022. And it's every year they're reworking their strategic plan on how they're helping the legislative piece and keeping boroughs intact. Very interesting. We'll have conference calls throughout the year, and I'll keep you guys updated on every time I attend it. But well worth it. Good connection, keeping Duncannon kind of in the limelight. We're the only local member of that committee. Everybody else is either from the Philly area or Pittsburgh. So it is nice to have us represented there.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything for the mayor? Also under the mayor's report, you have the code summary for August. Tony was unavailable due to some family challenges. He's back at it now. So if there's anything for Tony, please send that through the mayor.
And Tony, I will add, is back at it with a vengeance. He was in here today doing work orders for cleaning up properties that
We
didn't.
scared him on Saturday, we told him.
Yeah, he doing work orders and there's some properties that, that had notices that didn't come into compliance, and we're going in and cleaning them up and, doing what we have to do to enforce it. We went out and visited one of our real problem properties this morning. Tony and I went out because the resident happened to be sitting out on their porch, so Tony and I went out and had a talk with them and explained to them that, when they left for work tomorrow, if it's not cleaned up, when they come home from work tomorrow night, it will be, and the bill will be in their mailbox. So it'll be interesting to see if that particular individual complies. But he is, and he did have, he did keep me very informed through the whole process, and just had some personal things that were pressing and really more important that he had to take care of.
Under code enforcement also, I received an email right after the last council meeting in reference to a property suspected of being a cause of cockroach infestation on Lincoln Street off of Cherry. And I forwarded that to the office, to Chris and to Anthony, to Tony, just for some comment. I didn't know really how to work. The short story is there's a neighboring property that has, they believe, some cockroaches as a result of another property, a source property. They've made some efforts, according to the email, to remedy that and haven't been successful because the source hasn't been addressed. So I guess I didn't really know how that worked, and I felt like cockroaches were kind of a no-brainer, that should be an easy nuisance or an easy health concern, that we didn't need something specific in the borough to address that. However, it sounds like there may be a more effective means to address it if we have something specific to that infestation. So I don't know we're far enough along that we want to look into that, or we know enough about the situation at this point.
Bill, is that your take? I mean, I know when I discussed it with Bill that he said about seeing this other places and some of the challenges and trying. I mean, the
This
big
is
thing
not
is how do we
unusual, yeah.
prove that they came from this house to that house instead of vice versa?
You have to kind of prove it's a public nuisance.
Right.
If surrounding properties have all had treatment through Terminex or whatever service, would that,
Might be helpful. It's still difficult.
because I know that's the case, at least for 4 of the surrounding properties.
The problem is we don't have any way to even prove that there's an infestation inside the house. We have reports from the guys that when they pick up the trash that there's cockroaches under the trash bags. But, we can't,
That's what they say.
Cats are no longer an issue.
unless we can get invited in, which we have a plan that we're working on that will hopefully result in us getting invited in.
That's how it goes. If you get invited in, witnesses talk, get cooperation. But
Otherwise, it's pretty much impossible for us to even have the probable cause to get the search warrant to try to do anything. So we are working on it. We'll do what we can. It's probably one of those cases, well, with all codes things, we'd rather persuade people to come into compliance and do something themselves. In this particular case, my other concern is that they may want to do something and may not have the resources to do anything. So if that turns out to be the case, we'll have to look at that and see if we can find some solution there.
you can always go knock on the door. That you're allowed to do.
Anything else for codes enforcement?
The status of the burned out residence on the 100 block of Ann Street, what's happening there?
The somebody bought that property after the fire. The guy is supposedly going to be fixing it up. We did have, at one point, we had some code enforcement action for the outside of the property, for trash that wasn't picked up and grass that wasn't mowed. We haven't had any issues outside of the property since then. I don't know that we have anything that can force them to do anything, until he's ready to do something with that house. I think the bigger question, I think what he's trying to figure out is if he can fix it. It seemed to be from the conversation I had with him. If he can't fix it, then I'm gonna have to consult with Bill zoning wise, because I'm not sure you can build something there.
There's not enough setback.
Yeah, I don't think you can conform to the zoning on that lot to build new. I don't know, again, we'll have to consult and determine what, if we get to that point, but.
I did have an inquiry from a neighbor on that, and I think I'd asked you about the status at that point. Did I understand correctly that the original owner is out of state, but the current owner is in state?
Yes.
Okay, so at least we know we have someone relatively local.
And we got his attention because he was one of the ones that earlier in the summer we cleaned up the property for him and did billing for it.
Was there insurance? The prior owners?
I was told, I don't know this, but I was told that the prior owner collected the insurance and stayed out of town.
Okay. Well, it is possible to have an ordinance which would allow the borough to capture those fire insurance, escrow them, and make sure that the work is done. I have passed such ordinances in other municipalities and enforced them. everybody hates them when it goes to them. But it would protect and at least give you a fund from which to try to at least secure the building.
And, you know, I don't know that it would help with the other situation.
Right.
Where we had property on Church Street several years ago that the borough paid to demolish. That was a fire building. I don't know that there was insurance on that building at all. But that, you know, this isn't the first fire building we have. Now we have one on Market Street, which we are hopeful that it's torn down. We've been assured
Spoke with
this
the
one
owner
will be torn
today.
down. But that's the second fire in that building in 6 months.
If you want, I could just forward a copy of the ordinance I did for, I think it's Uniana Township or something, but I could forward it and take a look at it. But it does work. It does require the insurance companies to do it, and they're required to do it under the law, and they do.
I don't know there was
They do
such-
I
contact.
was gonna ask, how is disbursement controlled then? So there's a fire in the house next door, the funds are escrowed, do we decide when
Yep.
those funds are released?
We do.
I can see
It's
why
very,
people wouldn't- some people wouldn't like it, but
it's remarkably draconian.
Yeah.
It really is. It's very big brotherish, but it protects against the situation where the house burns down, the guy takes the insurance money and disappears, and you've got a nuisance property. That's what it's intended to do. So,
But there has to be insurance in the first place.
there has to be insurance in the first place,
Can-
but you can't require.
Can we incorporate flood damage and flood insurance proceeds into that?
No, this has to do
In some way?
with insurance regulation.
Is it but only for fire insurance?
Yeah.
Because we have a property in town where
That's flood insurance, I understand.
flood insurance. and
I'll look into it. I'm not
repairs-
aware of anything along those lines, you know, because they actually prefer places are abandoned. So I'll just pass that along, and if it's something you're interested in, you can take a look at it.
send it to the animals.
Okay. I got it. With the chickens.
Anything else under codes enforcement? Move on then to the secretary, my favorite report.
I have nothing for you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bauer.
One of these days she's going to.
I'm talking about bringing a speech this long.
She's going to save it for December. Anything for the secretary? Very good. Borough manager, Mr. Torgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have my written report. Most of those items are elsewhere on the agenda, so I won't go over those. Couple of things to update you on. The RFP for the IT, we've had 3 vendors in to visit so far. We have 1 more that's supposed to be in later this week that we've heard from all the people that we sent it to. The process that we're following is they come in, they do an assessment of our IT structure, we go over everything with them, answer any questions they have. They'll come back with a proposal. Their proposal and who we select, we may not end up doing exactly what they propose. This is to pick a vendor for the project, and there may be ideas that we like and that we want to combine, but this is to choose who will be the vendor, because then they would be our ongoing IT support as well. One of the things that we're looking at, and this was actually a suggestion of one of the vendors, and this is why I'd reach out to Mike, and Mike was, originally the plan was to have whoever is the contractor under the IT, under this RFP, would oversee the entire project, including the generator. It became obvious that these folks, for the most part, know nothing about generators. So the thought is that we may pull that part of the project separate and bid that ourselves, separate from the IT work. And that way, we have a little bit, we won't have the overhead of the general contractor type of overhead for them supervising that part of it. And since we have the expertise here to help us with it, it just seems to make sense to look at that. I'm hopeful that we will have some folks for the IT committee, the personnel and IT committee to meet with next month. Either at your regular meeting, or we may have to schedule some sessions to have them come in and present to you and talk to you guys and get interviewed by the committee as well as we evaluate the vendors. The trash RFP is out. We sent it to every trash company that we could find in the area. The only one I didn't send it to was Republic Services, and that was because after 3 phone calls to Republic's 800 number, and getting the same runaround from 3 different customer service reps who couldn't tell me where to send the email for their company to get this bid, I gave up. I could not find anything on their website, could not find anybody that could give me any address to send it to. 3 times I had customer service people say, well, is this for residential service? And I tried to explain, no, this is for a government contract. So, you know, it is advertised in the paper, so they may see it there, but what we also have done is, you know, in all of these, we tell them that if they have any questions, we ask the questions come to us in writing so that we can distribute then any answers to everybody so that it keeps the playing field level. We did get some questions on the trash RFP. One of the things was somebody observed that the total tonnage of trash that we had in the RFP seemed to be astronomically high based on what their experiences with averages. We went back and did some checking, and we found that I think what happened was we had some other bills from from Advanced Disposal that were lumped in because they were taking our dumpsters at the plant and things like that. So that is we're supposed to have those proposals back October 2nd, and then they will go to Finance Committee for review, and then you know, any recommendations that they have at that point. A couple other things that came up since the agenda was prepared. Just to update you on the CRS process with the flood insurance. We are in the process now of applying to become part of the program. Then they will send somebody in to do a base evaluation before we start earning the points to get the discounts. One of the things we had to do is we had to document repetitive loss properties. And just to give people an idea, you know, because we talk a lot about the floodplain ordinance and the issues with the floodplain in this borough, but to give you an idea of why it is such a big issue and why FEMA insists on the restrictions they do, in the borough of Duncannon, we have 38 properties that are classified as repetitive loss properties for flooding, that have had flood insurance claims or gotten public assistance for flood damage. A total over the course of the incidents, and this only goes back to, I think, somewhere in the 1990s. I know it doesn't go back as far as Agnes or the 70s. But at any rate, for the 3 incidents that they have cataloged in this, the total was $2,210,000 in damages, an average of $817,000 of damages in any one incident. So you can understand, and when you see all of your news reports about the hurricanes and all the flooding elsewhere and so forth, you know, Congress is trying to make the flood insurance program be self-sufficient, trying to cut back on the amount of government subsidies that go to that flood insurance program. As a result, FEMA is pushing very hard to put an end to repetitive losses, quit paying claims for the same property over and over and over. So they're trying to encourage either policies that make that property not be damaged if there's flooding, or their preference is to make that property not be there the next time there's a flood. So that kind of gives you an idea of the situation with that. We already talked about the Chestnut Street project. They're going to start October 2nd. We don't expect to have any problems with access to the park, possibly during the day, but in the evenings they will be backfilling every night. We are going to be getting notices out to the residents that will be impacted, and also on the streets up there that are one-way, I believe Lincoln and trying to remember if Prospect is or not. Just Lincoln. We will be letting them know that the one-way restriction will be lifted during the project so that they can get in and out without any problems there. We mentioned DEP's coming tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Basically because we passed the lead test, now they're looking for something else that they can tell EPA, oh, aren't they doing a great job of enforcing the water regulations in Duncannon. That's all I can figure out. I mean, this visit is premised on, we have a facility where we have 2 wells that are mixed together at that facility. The facility was built, according to everybody I talked to, at DEP's direction. We even have an employee in our Public Works Department who was hired in part because he had a background as a masonry contractor and would be able to help build that building. Now here we are 8 years later, and they're saying, well, we don't see any permit for this, and well, we're not sure you're allowed to be mixing the water that way, and this is what they wanted us to do. So that's a big part of their visit tomorrow, although I am told by Kevin to expect them to look at everything, even though they only said they're coming to that part of the system. And then the other thing, just to update on the utilities, I'm happy to tell you that last month we had no shutoffs. All the electric bills that got notices did come through and either paid their bills or made proper arrangements. We just did 10-day notices for this month. We had 52 of them going out. We had a similar amount last month, so the people are coming around and paying. I wish they would pay on time so they'd avoid those fees. I'd rather have that money go towards their balance than towards paying fees, but if they don't want to work with us on payment arrangements and so forth, we can only do, what we can do, but.
Do we still have the capability to do budget billing?
That's a good question. I'm told we do, but I've never had anybody ask for it.
There was a very stringent policy created several years ago. It was very stringent. But I believe we paid for software to be able to do that.
It's in there, yeah.
I don't know if that policy should perhaps be reviewed, or, if that's
Absolutely.
something that we can make it work better or more applicable for people. I don't think many people are using it or doing it. I know it was very easy to get kicked out too as well.
I've had one person ask me one time, and I said, we have it, to talk to Kathy, because I knew she knew about it, but
I think on our scale, it's hard to keep something like that and have a policy that keeps it from getting abused.
Right.
That's my guess as to what would have
So
happened.
I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense, what we have maybe to do.
We can look at it.
But at least to review it, it's been years since it's,
we'll take a look at it.
Avatar.
We'll put that on your list, because you've got enough to do for the audit.
Let's put that on the animal committee.
Oh, it didn't come to my committee? Oh, I just wrote it down. Cross that out.
That's everything I have.
anything for the manager. And you said all of your action items are elsewhere on the agenda.
Yes.
Anything for the manager from the table? Move on then to the treasurer's report. You have before you a weekly banking review dated August 31st, 2017. Is there any wish for action on the banking review? Also attached to that is the statement of revenues and expenditures through 8/31. Bob, do you have any comments on the documents?
I do
Or Chris?
not.
Any wish for action?
Make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Todd?
Yes, absolutely, subject to all.
Second.
Daryl.
Motion by Ms. Young and second by Mr. Crawford to accept the weekly banking review as the treasurer's report subject to audit. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Also, we have a selected check register showing bills to be ratified and bills to be paid. Any wish for action on the bills?
Motion to ratify and approve the bills, subject to audit.
Motion by Mr. motion by Mr. Crawford, second by Mr. Kirkhoff to ratify and approve the bills subject to audit. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Byron, we'll throw you in before we get to the standing committees. Fire chief.
The only thing I have to report is all the pumping apparatus has been pump tested, all passed, flying colors, and they've all been maintenance this year. I've had some people contacting me about concerns about the house that has been, they caught fire the other night for the second time. And, people were asking me all kinds of questions. Obviously, I'm referring them to the fire marshal for any determination. But the thing that concerns me was that once I talked to the Assistant Chief Wise that was there at the time, he called for the fire marshal right away at the fire because of the board missing off the back of the house when he walked around back when it was on fire. He was told by state police when they showed up that they were called there, I assume by the owners, the day of or the day before for that purpose. My immediate question, and Charlie didn't know the answer because he didn't think of it, is why wasn't the board put back on after the owner called the state police? So I don't know if there's any, and obviously it's wide open again, and we've chased people out of there the other night. So I don't know if the borough can do anything as far as I don't know how you can call it, emergency action to get that place boarded back up, or it's going to be a problem. There's kids in there. They're going in there.
Chief, I spoke to the owner today, and he's gonna tear it down, so, it sounded like quickly.
Okay.
He already had somebody in mind and was asking about, what he'd have to do to haul the trash, haul the waste out of there and so forth, and about permits and so forth, so I would expect that to happen pretty quickly. And if it doesn't, we will absolutely, right now I'm thinking he probably is going to tear it down quicker than Tony could take any action to require anything.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything, is there, and I'd ask the solicitor this, I guess, is there anything, any precedent out there from other municipalities where there can be an emergency order for something like that?
We'd have to give some notice, but it could be a short notice. This is clearly a public nuisance.
Yep.
You have people coming in that aren't supposed to be there, you got fires started, this is easy proof. But we still have to, give notice to the
I didn't know if there was
opportunity to the owner.
any type of different action other than just the normal standard.
You could give a 2-day, 3-day notice, that sort of thing, and then the remedy would be that the borough goes out,
Could we see if he would board it up in the meantime? Unless he's gonna tear it down in like a few days.
Yeah, that's
what I.
if he's not gonna tear it down right away,
Yeah.
then he's gonna have to board it up.
Well, and that, on your point there, solicitor, would that be, if say it's a couple day notice, say, hey, we have a nuisance here, we have a problem, it needs secured, and he would take no action on it, if the borough would go out and secure it at his expense, obviously a lien on the property, so to speak, good deal.
How it works. You're on that, Chris, you know
I
what
was
you're.
gonna say, do you need action for the, because, I mean,
No.
if,
I think that's already, you already seen that.
He's okay,
We're
we're good.
my point is, if Tony's, I don't wanna wait to see what happens, we can go two-pronged at it, do our thing, and he can keep doing what he's doing, but I don't want this to
Even
continue to be
a
an issue.
verbal notice recorded
Yeah.
would be sufficient under these circumstances.
Is there any type of other borough ordinance or any municipality ordinance that you would know of, like for a special securing of a property, like having a fire or something of the extraordinary circumstance, not just a normal building, the door falls off of it or abandoned building, but something that a property has been damaged by fire, storm, whatever. Is there any type of other ordinance that the borough could adopt for an exponential securing of the property, instead of having to go through the normal procedure or declaring it a nuisance?
Not to make it any quicker.
Okay.
I mean, there's some maintenance code things you could do, but that's not gonna help us with getting it done quickly. And, I mean, we were just talking earlier about capturing the, like fire insurance money, making sure it's used to rebuild, but again, that's nothing that's gonna happen quickly, so.
Yep.
So is your plan at this point, Chris, just to monitor to make sure he's moving forward?
Well, the first thing I'm gonna do tomorrow is I'm gonna call, because he was supposed to be calling BIU about the permit for demolition. So if they've made that contact, then that's an indication to me that he's following through on what he's doing.
Understood.
And, then we'll see, and I'll touch base with Norm and let him know, as Bill just said verbally, that, and I'm gonna blame it on you guys and the chief. I'm just gonna tell him, look, there's push that you gotta either get it torn down quickly or secure it, which is what he has to do anyhow.
Right, and if he doesn't, we're gonna secure it and charge him, plus 10% and legal fees.
Came directly from Chris Adams.
Plus a 10% revitalization and development committee fee. So that's gonna fall under my committee.
Does the demolition fee have to be approved by council, or is that something
No,
that's
that's
done
a
at?
BIU,
borough?
that's a building code matter.
I was gonna make a suggestion if it had to be that you give a contingent approval upon that, to maybe speed it along, but that's good.
A, they don't have to. B, I would never ask the council to approve something they hadn't seen, an application blindly without seeing it. We just can't do that. But we'll take care of it. We'll be on them.
Good deal.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Anything for the fire department? Fire
I
chief?
got something real quick. A few meetings back, you had mentioned about something called a dry hydrant. And the consensus around here was that the problem was with the railroad putting something in. So I have been talking to Norfolk Southern about other things, but I brought that up and I'm waiting to hear back from the gentleman. His name is Rudy. and he's looking into how Norfolk would respond to us doing anything. Now, I know there's other sides to it, have to do with flooding and all that stuff, but I did bring it up, and is there any way you could provide me just like a description or something exact, just so I know,
Yeah.
and I can give that to him, so it's very specific on what you're exactly.
And actually, Jackie gave me information to get hold of somebody too, and I've been just busy time of year, I haven't done it, but
Okay.
that ends this weekend for a while, so I'm gonna get on that too.
Okay.
About getting a hold of that contact and seeing how to move forward too. But yeah, I'll get you a description of what we wanna do. And just in a nutshell, we don't want to disturb the ground underneath that
Right.
archway at all.
That's why.
We just wanna run a pipe through there.
Yeah,
And
and
whether
so,
it's just,
and if you need to use it, what, you just extend it with a hose or something?
well, yeah, basically, the pipe would terminate on the other side of the archway at the river somewhere.
Yeah,
And then we would hook our hose onto it, throw it out in the river, and we'd hook onto it at the other end.
okay,
So it's essentially the same thing as the dry hydrant they put in Noy Park,
yeah,
just a little different configuration. It'd be the same connection at each end.
okay.
Well, North Park's in the water all the time, pretty much.
Right. It'd be the same connection up top. And then if anybody's seen the new Sulphur Springs Bridge, that would be similar in the connections on each end that we would need.
Okay.
And then the pipe would obviously just, whether it's, looks nice like the Noy Park does in the ground on the Borough side, and then is just exposed through the
Right.
archway with stones just to keep it from flopping around, and then terminate at the other end with the thread connection. You know, something just secured like that, that it can't be really tampered with. And
Okay.
Were you able to do anything with the manhole in the municipal lot that Roger mentioned?
We didn't get to that yet.
We
He's
didn't get-
been out of
And
town
we were
so
doing,
much.
we were looking into that on Saturday, so too.
Okay.
Yep,
We have another idea down there too,
okay.
so someday. But we gotta get together soon on another issue.
You got my number, so
Call 911, they know how to.
text me. Do you
No,
text yet?
no. Roger, did you just say it?
Call me.
I'll call
Send me
you.
an email. Have your people call my people.
Anything else with the fire?
He probably still has a dial phone. I did. Byron, we had talked about, you had come and talked to Parks and Rec about an issue possibly going this summer on the field. I need you to put a committee together of 2 people.
Okay,
And when you have that committee together, contact me and I'll contact the rest of them and we're gonna sit down and talk about that. See if we
Okay.
can do something.
sounds
Okay.
good.
What is that?
It has been brought to our attention and the chief and I, as being kids in this community, remember carnivals.
Oh, okay.
And I've had more questions about it and more questions about it. So, but before I would venture in anything, anyone that commits to it's gonna commit to it. And the Lions Club's interested, the fire company is interested, some of the other organizations in town are interested.
Penn
but they're-
Township is interested.
Yes, Penn Township.
Bet
So
EMS
there
would
needs
be
a
interested.
committee of people that's gotta be committed.
It's a lot of
Not
work,
easy
a lot
to
of
do.
time, so.
And I would venture to say that the fire company, obviously, interest is,
We want your money. Get
Well-
started with it.
it would, like Craig said about the lot of people, I mean, we may be able to come up with a couple people to do a lot of that
Exactly.
stuff. But our main interest obviously is gonna be on having a few stands and doing that kind of stuff, so.
Yes.
That's probably the other people's are, but the more entities we get involved, the more
Yes.
people you got.
Exactly. And we do have help offered to us from New Bloomfield.
And I know they've got very dedicated volunteers in Bloomfield, spend a lot of time and effort to put that together.
It's a lot.
A lot of them take off work for the week, you know.
It's a lot of work. I've been through it for too many years.
I believe that. I can vaguely remember both the Penn Township Carnival and the Cooper Field Carnival. They were a great asset. I don't know that, you know, we can duplicate that. I don't know how New Bloomfield does with attendance, or if they're still making the same amount of money.
Yeah, Bloomfield does probably some of the best.
Agreed.
I know based on, yeah, the connections I have with that carnival, that they actually make a lot of money on that.
Depends if it rains.
Well, even this year when it did rain, they still made enough money that they get better prices because they do so well in attendance. So that's where it would be different for us, because we wouldn't get the same prices.
And there's a Heritage Carnival they've done for probably 50 years or longer, so it's, getting
Put
something
your
up and
next
running.
meeting, toss that around, if you would for me, sir. Thank you. I won't ask Keen, because he never.
Yeah, I was surprised at how well we did with us, to be honest.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm always afraid of the carnivals. Like, I know in Newport, they've had challenges with consolidated some things and don't have the return that they want. So, very good. Anything else from the fire chief? Move on to standing council committees, facilities and fleet, Mr. Epple.
Mike is still working on a long-term plan, and since we have more fellows working, he's been able to get out and work at that, and I'm gonna keep after him to see what we can come up with. One thing we're gonna need is a new riding mower, so Roger said he has put money in the recreation fund towards this, and we're gonna have to see what kind of a final price we come up with.
If you can get an estimate to the finance committee, that could be something, because we shouldn't need a riding mower till spring, I mean, if that installed.
That's true, but we don't have any final price on what he really wants. So I have to get with him on that, and I'm also gonna try and arrange some type of meeting for this electricity problem in the building. I don't expect to have anything ready till our facilities meeting this week. I'd like to postpone that, and we'll have something ready by next council, hopefully. If we can get Mr. Grogan and Mike and Roger and myself together. I don't have anything else to present time on that.
Anything for the fleet and facilities committee?
I just appreciate keeping Chris in the loop as well with, especially with the IT piece, so that that project, it's not two ships passing in the night. So keep Chris in the loop as well, please.
All right.
Anything else? Move on then to finance administration communication, Ms. Young.
Excuse me, I think there's one other. Did Mike talk to you about the truck?
No.
Roger, did he talk, I thought he had talked to you guys about the,
They're waiting for parts, put it back
Well,
together.
yeah, but the, help me here, it has a cracked, is it the piston?
No. That's
Or-
cracked sleeve,
Okay, but,
yes.
and he had recommended, he said, Mike had said the cost of that was gonna be, to repair that was not worth it. And his recommendation was that we just, have it put back together and replace the
Injectors.
injectors, yeah.
And that's,
Injectors is under regular maintenance, so.
Yeah,
yes.
I just, so. you
That's
have to
why I
have the
didn't
truck.
think of anything, because cracked sleeve, it's a dry sleeve, so you're not gonna hurt nothing. I mean, if you were running that truck constantly day in and day out and making work out of it, yeah, this cylinder could expand, which would cause you to start to lose compression in that cylinder. The use around here, from what we're looking at, the cracked sleeve, there was no indication when we got it, the compression tests were all high on all the cylinders, so it never indicated that it was cracked. But there's a hairline crack in it. And it's a dry, if it was a wet sleeve, you wouldn't be running, because you'd be leaking water into the cylinder. But it's a dry sleeve. That's all I know. I know when he said about the injectors, I said, we'll take that up with Chris, because that's normal maintenance, so.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because when he asked me if it was gonna come up tonight, so I wanted to make sure that we did discuss it.
That's, when he asked me, I said, I'd just put it back together, put the new injectors in it and run it. You're gonna get a few more years out of that truck.
And that was all the work that was discussed and approved last month.
Yes, except for the injectors, and that's under normal maintenance. An injector in a diesel is the same as a spark plug in yours.
Oh, okay. When I think of injectors, I think of big money.
No, injectors, I'll tell you what, I'll compare my truck. My truck to replace a plug and a coil pack is $300 per cylinder. I have 16, do the math. $500 to put 8 injectors into a diesel is a lot cheaper.
Oh,
And the fact that the compression was high indicates there are no leaks.
No. It was just a shame that that head cracked where the manifold did, that's all.
Anything else?
That's all I have right now.
Anything for Mr. Epple? Ms. Young?
Thanks. I am very grateful for Bob and what he has brought to the office with the financial piece. It's, you know, for the first time, I feel very comfortable in what's coming in and out of the office, and he's a very humble man. So when he asks for help, it gets my attention. So if you want to, Bob, you can explain the situation with the in advance of the motion that we're going to make.
Sure. As you know, I started at the end of November of last year, and at that time, the Early Intervention Program had provided funding to hire the Susquehanna Group to come in and do a couple of very important things. Get the borough caught up on past due audits, which only included 2014 and 2015. That was one mistake. Should have included 16 as well, but didn't. And provide temporary support for about 3.5 months until I came into the borough to do the day-to-day stuff that needed to be done from an accounting and financial reporting perspective. I came on board, got to learn, and I'm still learning every day, believe it or not. But I was finding things, and I've informed council and the committees along the way, the things that should have been done weren't done that had significant financial impact on this borough. And I continue to find those things, but those things are significant time consumers. Not to mention trying to keep up with or fixing or creating things the way they should be for the current year. So all that said, I had to commit quite a bit of work to assist the auditors and the Susquehanna Group in getting the 2014 books up to snuff, the 2015 books up to snuff, and then making sure that all that properly rolled forward to the beginning of 2016. So that's where I come in, and that's where the problem begins. I was under the impression that after the 14 and 15 audits, that the borough's books for 2016 should be in significantly good shape, or at least much better shape than were in 14 and 15. And that was correct to a certain extent, but when I was able to roll forward and post all these audit entries that the auditors and the Susquehanna Group created and posted to get our books for 14 and for 15 correct, and I posted all those entries, we actually did have opening trial balance, is called the general ledger trial balance, that tied out to what the 12/31/15 audit said should by line item. I was all excited because it worked. It was great. So then I figured, okay, well, let's just see. So I decided to run a general ledger trial balance as of 12/31/16 just to see, once the entries went, how the activity for the year took place. Well, I had a bit of a surprise that didn't make me very happy. But just right off the bat, general fund cash balance, checking account balance, on our books shows to be a 5-figure credit balance, like a negative balance, like a $20-some thousand negative balance, which can't be because we were not flush with cash during 2016, but we had more than sufficient cash to meet our obligations, pay our bills, and have a small accounts payable at the end of the year. So it didn't make sense. So I started digging and digging and digging, and I was having issues trying to reconcile cash. And that wasn't even looking at the rest of the accounts of the borough. So I talked to Chris. I said, listen, I'm really concerned. Now, I can do this stuff. My problem is I'd have to work double time. I'd have to work 80 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week. And that wasn't going to work. Not financially, not physically. We have the 2018 budget that has to be built. And in order for me to build the budget for 2018, I have to do refinements of 2017 revenue and expenditure projections. All of that needs to be done on top of getting the 2016 books ready for audit. So I said, my recommendation was, listen, I've talked to an individual, Mike Filanowski. He was the accountant that was engaged by the Susquehanna Group to help the borough for the 3.5 months prior to my arrival. He is a professional accountant, retired, outstanding, and he's available, as he was available back for the Susquehanna Group. I talked to him about it. He does recall the problems. He does recall the general fund cash. He said, Bob, it was a monster, which is why I got off of it while I was still here and focused more on the utility fund cash balances, which he never really got to finish because his tenure here was over. So Mike, I talked to Mike about it, and then I talked to Chris. Mike enjoyed working here, has the ability to do the work here, and is available for a very, very inexpensive hourly rate of $17 an hour. That is extremely cheap. So I believe that was my recommendation to Chris. Chris concurred. I discussed it with the Finance Committee. And that's where we are. That was my professional recommendation.
Is that your motion?
You can't make one, so allow me, Mr. Williams. I'd like to authorize the staff to retain Mike Filanowski to provide accounting support services for the 2016 audit preparation for an amount not to exceed $9,000, subject to the solicitor's review of the service agreement.
I have reviewed the service agreement. I sent, probably by mail, and then just one small change on it. I think your motion should indicate that he is an independent contractor and not to be considered an employee.
It does.
So amended.
No, it does. The agreement does state.
Yeah, but the motion.
The motion as well.
I want that in the minutes.
Please restate your motion.
No. I can't. To authorize staff to retain Mike Filanowski to provide accounting support services for the 2016 audit preparation for an amount not to exceed $9,000 as an independent contractor and not an employee.
We have a second by Mr. Perkoff. So good?
Yep.
Any further discussion? Kathy, are you going on the motion?
Just to further explain, we really don't, obviously we don't know, but based on his experience and the work that he's already done with the borough, we think that number is very high. We don't anticipate it being that number, but we just want to make sure that, we're covered and everything's cool.
Any further discussion? We have a motion with a second. Motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Perkoff, to authorize staff to retain Mike Filanowski to provide accounting support services for the 2016 audit preparation for an amount not to exceed $9,000, subject to status as an independent contractor and not an employee. All in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, the next piece is the round 3 of the EIP grant application. I always hesitate to bring these kinds of things up because sometimes the ideas go rampant before we hear the whole story. But what we want to look at, we need to do a rate evaluation of the rates of the utilities in the borough. And part of that, a second part of that for this grant or for the EIP program would be looking into the feasibility of selling the utilities. Now, that does not mean we're selling the utilities. It is simply the feasibility based on the rate structure and what comes out of the recommendation to see if that makes sense. So we would be applying to DCED for the 3rd round of the EIP grant program. Have we heard back from Marita for sure that we can put both of them together?
Yes, we can put both together.
Okay. Based on the funding out of the Commonwealth, we have no idea how soon or if this program will be funded, but this would be documenting our intentions for the next step of what the borough wants to focus on based on the EIP recommendations. So I would like to make a motion that we authorize the manager to submit an EIP grant application for funding to study the borough's utilities and their rate structures.
What's our match on that? Oh, you seconded right there.
Yes.
What's our match gonna be on that?
We won't know till we apply.
And where their funding comes from.
Right now, what Marita told me was that get your application in because they expect to have a backlog because they're waiting for a funding bill. And so she said the sooner you get it in, that they're still approving them, but funding, they have to wait for the, for the legislature to solve that whole mess. Budget problems in the state. But yeah, so that's where they're at with that right now.
We have a motion by Ms. Young, a second by Mr. Frotharmel to authorize the manager to submit an EIP grant application to DCED for funding to study the borough's utilities and the existing rate structures. Any further discussion?
When we submit, do we submit what we want it to be, or just that we're interested, and then they come back and say, well, this is what we're funding and this is our match?
No, the application, the grant application includes a proposed budget. We'll get quotes from people to get an idea of what it'll cost for the studies. And, you do have it's not a budget that you have to stick to in stone, but you do have to lay out a budget and justifications in the grant application.
Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I believe that is all that I have.
Related to that, has there been any further action or discussion on the discussion from some time ago to remove ourselves from PUC oversight on the water system?
There has not been, just because of, well, we were looking at it on the electric, not the water.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, the electric, I'm sorry, the electric.
We can revisit that. The last, when we revisited it before, when we looked at it before, I believe the reaction was that because of all of them saying they didn't expect it to be that easy, that it would be, all the responses that came in said, here's what it'll cost if nobody opposes it, but you can expect it to be opposed and that it can become an expensive process.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember either. I know we talked about it.
Yeah.
Who would oppose it? Would that be us, or would it be an organization?
It could be anybody, but the one thing they said, I remember, and I'd have to go back and pull the file to look at all the responses, but I remember one of them specifically mentioned the Office of the Consumer Advocate would likely do so.
Do you remember what the costs were?
I don't remember they didn't give us a cost on if
Yeah.
it, because that would be based on you're basically in regulatory court.
Right.
So I can't remember the figure.
We try to budget maybe something for it for next year to at least start, like maybe preliminary, like, I don't know, maybe it's $5,000 to start.
I know there were 3 proposals from attorneys. We still have them, I got them in
Yes.
my file, you still have them, we can pull them out and take a look at them. They're pretty doom and gloom,
Yeah.
and very
I
expensive.
mean, that's what I meant. Even if it's like we spend a couple thousand just to see if nobody opposes us, because maybe we get lucky and they say, oh, it's 26 customers, and they don't.
Because part of the whole process was that's why we have to do a rate study to do anything with the electric rates. And that's, we've spent countless hours and dollars on concerns with the cost adjustment. That's been a thorn in the side in this borough for decades, probably. And it's because we haven't had a rate study since 1980 something.
Well, but the rate study that we're talking about here is more the water and sewer rates.
Right, but that's what brought up my discussion, or, the comment, because I don't remember that being.
I mean, our electric rates, although it's complicated and confusing to the residents and to the staff, to be honest, the rate adjustment, the cost adjustment does keep the rates, they calculate based on what we're paying for the electricity and using the formula that's approved by the PUC for that. If we didn't have PUC oversight, we would not have to have that. We could have a rate that's set by council.
And we're talking 30 customers or something outside of the borough, which is why we're in PUC oversight. Again, I just think that this is something that's come across this way, there's a dedicated committee for it for, I think, 2 years, and nothing has ever happened. So even if it is, I don't know what a sizable amount of money is to look at that.
Yeah, would it be possible to kind of look and see, I don't know if it is, just to see, just to get to that first, like, the beginning steps to where somebody would oppose it at first, how much it would cost to get there, potentially?
Engage the
Because
services
like, I'd be willing to.
of one of these
I
attorneys.
don't know,
yeah.
I'd be willing to spend maybe a few $1,000s to do that, to see, so somebody,
I don't remember the numbers.
maybe
I
we
think I
dropped
was
at that
looking at
point, but because it would get
$10,000.
exponentially more expensive,
It's not
but.
few.
Yeah, I think it was $10,000 for that. And
Okay.
then if it's opposed, then it's litigation and off we go. You know.
I'd like to at least look at it maybe for budgeting for next year. 'Cause I'd be on the fence, but I might wanna spend $10,000 to try and do that and see if we get.
I'll pull those proposals and I'll bring them back to the legal committee and.
Once we spend that $10,000, Bill,
Mhm.
and then it goes, can it stop right there? We don't have to spend no more?
I believe so, but you should
Okay.
probably consult with it.
I mean, I would assume we could drop.
Yeah, normally you could under most circumstances, yes.
I don't think they would make us litigate ourselves like further and spend more.
Right.
So.
Keep in mind too, we spent $10,000 pretty freely a couple years ago to examine chicken manure in borough.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Okay.
things
What
you have
about
to, there's
the
times
chicken?
$10,000 is an amount you have to risk on a regular basis in something like this, so.
But I'm still not sure what the return, whether it's worth it to the borough, what you would gain by it. That's my basic question.
I thought of something else, since Roger gave me his love letter. If any of the departments have budget requests, things that they want to have considered, if you could get those to us as quickly as possible to make sure we're covering all of that.
Like we have a riding mower, unknown price at this
It's, well, there's a new mower's on here for 10 grand.
That's, might contribute, the borough then has to contribute the other half, because I know it's gonna be more than 10 grand. But I put 10 grand in figuring that's how much was used in Parks and Rec. Okay?
Yep.
I have to get.
And
this
any other
right to find
question,
out the
Christie,
price.
let me, I'll be more than glad to
Is
try.
this Parks and Rec specific?
Yeah, this is Parks and Rec
Yes, that's
2018
just Parks and
budget.
Rec,
Yeah,
our wish list.
yeah, exactly.
Something,
Did he give you a copy of this?
I don't have that.
All right, I'll give it to you.
I have one for you.
okay.
I was gonna deliver it personally.
I may be speaking out of
Is that why you
turn.
walked away from me?
I may be speaking out of turn, but something that I thought of again tonight when I see one bulb or two bulbs left is, should we consider, can we consider, maybe this is IT, as part of the EIP, but some lighting upgrades here in this space and inside the building. The LED fixtures have become so much less expensive for the interior fixtures.
This was discussed, when do you remember, Wolfie, what was that, probably in April, we had a whole meeting of utilities.
And
Chris wasn't able to be here for a meeting, so we spent the whole meeting talking about electrical, because we had 2 electricians here.
And I can tell you right now, the price of the LED 4-foot tubes has come down $3 a piece just in the last few months. They're $6 each for an LED 4-foot tube.
We found out it doesn't make sense to buy, if you have to replace a ballast or replace a couple bulbs, it doesn't make sense to do that anymore.
Yes, it
Yeah,
does.
I mean, on the fluorescents.
On the LED, yeah, actually, I am inclined to go with electronic ballast and LED tubes versus a strictly LED fixture that is all built in and stuff, all put together for you. That thing goes bad, those strips go bad, the driver goes bad, whatever. You're talking a pain in the butt to tear them apart. Some of them you may not be able to.
You have to replace the whole fixture.
I can get an 8-foot fixture with 4 tubes for $75. Brand new fixture just like that with 4-foot tubes. An LED equivalent fixture is gonna cost you twice as much initially. And with a fixture like this, we can change the ballast for 18 bucks. You can buy another tube for 6 bucks. Long-term maintenance is a lot cheaper. You're gonna be saving the same amount of money. So yeah, we were talking about that being part of the project, because we can reduce the energy usage in the building, then we can reduce possibly the size of the generator. We don't have to have as big a generator, we don't have as much load. So there are things in here we can do and some equipment we can install that will reduce your electric
That's the
use.
point I was trying to make, is that, you know, once you figure on replacing a pair of bulbs and a ballast on these fluorescent fixtures, it almost makes no sense, not even considering the long-term savings of the LED consumption, to not go LED.
Oh,
I think, Chris, you're on that, we've all been on the same page, is that if something gets replaced, it's been being upgraded to LED. I think for the most part, we've been, that was early on, we talked about that, let's just, even if it means spending an extra $20 for each thing, like, let's just do it now and get, you've seen it with the streetlights, you've all seen it.
So, yeah, absolutely, so maybe some investment or consideration on the budget, and, you know, I don't know what those numbers look like, or what, you know, scale plan would look like, but maybe some consideration.
Even a small amount of money could make a big
Right.
chunk into
Do
electric.
we have a little bit now that we can cure that problem?
You didn't want to do that.
Let's put it in the budget, let's work through next year.
We could be black by then.
We could be.
Yeah, I don't know.
You got voting polls coming in here,
Yeah.
we got meetings in here.
Can we get pricing? I mean, and maybe,
So are you telling me it's less than $1,000 to do this room, Wolfie?
Excuse me?
Is it
ma'am?
less than $1,000 to do this room, to replace
You
the,
know you got 6 lights? You talking about these 6 lights here?
Yeah.
yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, less than.
Oh, my gosh, yeah, we're talking $450.
Then we'll have a picnic.
I'll put you 6 brand new fixtures up here for $450. Yeah.
I make a motion that we allot up to $600, just in case they run into any problems to replace the lighting in this room.
Or if a socket's bad or something.
I'll second it.
a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Ms. Young, to allocate up to $600
Yes.
to upgrade the lighting in this room to LED.
Do we, how does that work? Does the borough staff do the replacement, or do we?
I guess what concerns me is that things like this, I just prefer to approach them more comprehensively and to look at the whole, for example, I mean, this is the least used space in the building. If we're going to invest in better lighting, I would rather do it out front where people are actually using that lighting and it's affecting their eyesight and so forth. I mean, that's, you know, a traveled and a used area of the building far more than here. So if we look at the whole building and the economy of scale that you get in doing the project and doing it right, but, you know, that just would be my preference.
Will there be time, if we held the motion off until the October meeting, would there be time to get the work done? I don't want it to be dark in here for the polls. So that would be the beginning of November. So you're looking at, like, you know, if we approve it at the next meeting, a 2-week window. Would we be able to get the work done in that amount of time?
Well, I guess the first question is, do we just need a light bulb if that's, the concern is the poles, or is the fixture bad? We don't know. I mean, it's just not,
Well, I mean, for that part, even if it is just a light bulb, I'd rather spend the money to upgrade now. That's what I was getting at. If it's, we may be able to change that light bulb for $20, but I'd rather spend the extra and get it to LED now and not waste another light bulb and have the same thing. Especially, and this room, I mean, it's notably more darker.
This is a room where your public comes into, and if we can't set an example on trying to be energy efficient as a borough, there's something wrong.
I don't disagree with any of that, but it's a room where the public comes into once a month and twice a year to vote, as opposed to the spaces that we use that have poor lighting, where I have employees that are
withdraw my motion.
working. I'm not saying we shouldn't
I
do it.
withdraw my motion.
Does anyone have a sense for what it would cost to do the building? You guys have done.
I could get you a number on that. I mean, how many fixtures do you have in the office? 4 or 5?
Let's count them next week. If you could stop in, we'll take a look at everything and put together a proposal for the whole building.
You got $6 a bulb. If you have to change a ballast, you got $18. Okay, so 14 fixtures is gonna cost you about $50. All right, $50 a fixture, and I guarantee you, you're gonna use less than 3/4 of what you're using on the fixture that we're gonna replace. It is cost effective, and you're getting free labor, so don't forget that.
Mr. Wolfenberger, as the person who's most affected by the labor of this project, do you see that there might be any savings in doing the whole building all at once versus doing it one room at a time? Do you believe there's any significant amount of money to be saved there?
Save, I'm not sure where you would save the money. I mean, if you do a room here, and then next month do another room, I mean, you're not gonna see your electric bill cut in half.
But as far as like purchasing the parts,
The
all the parts you
equipment
need.
stuff, no, you're not gonna be purchasing enough to make a difference. If you went in and you were gonna buy 1,000 bulbs and 500 ballasts, then you would get a cut in the price. But just to go in and buy, 20, 30 tubes and a couple of ballasts, it's not gonna be that much difference.
I'd like to make a motion to approve up to $600 to replace the lighting in this room with LED.
Second.
It's
And
not fair.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Chris.
during that time.
You're not my friend.
Take a look around and
I'm
you
in front of you.
get an idea
We
for,
can count out the rest of the fixtures.
let's count the rest of the fixtures and we'll put that in the budget for hopefully.
And some of these may be, I don't know if some of these are T8s, we wouldn't have to change the ballasts. Most of them are T12s, I don't know what they
I
are.
think these are 12.
Who knows, the smaller ones, the 4-footers out there?
That I don't know.
Yeah, so that would have just open up.
Yeah, route change now.
Well,
So they could be.
So they might be up there.
They may be, yeah. So then you just talking some bulbs, just take the bulbs out, put bulbs in.
Yep.
Does any of that IT money go for fixing this up?
No.
To reduce the
Because
cost.
it would be in advance of the grant, even if there was room in that grant.
Okay. Even if you had money left or something and could
You
use
couldn't
it.
backdate it to
You
cover.
couldn't use it,
You
well,
do
you
it
couldn't
now.
use it for
It
lighting.
would not be eligible.
It would not be eligible for, okay. Okay, you're just talking a generator to back up this building for emergency use and
Right.
everything. Okay.
We now have a motion by Mr. Crowther, second by Mr. Kirkhoff, to allocate up to $600 for the purpose of replacing and upgrading the lights in this room to LED fixtures. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We were still on finance administration communication.
I know, that's not under mine.
Yeah, we would just.
That's not fair.
We were off.
Give that back to him.
All right. Is there anything else for Ms. Young? All right. Parks and Recreation, Mr. Williams.
Chris has the update on the Halloween parade.
Yep, got the borough website updated with times, place, all the forms people need to download for registering the parade. Got some flyers out, I'm gonna put some more flyers out tomorrow. People are starting to finally return them to me, some of them have emailed them to me. My plan is to come to the borough office once a week, collect all filled out forms, and then, updated dates from there, work on getting the numbers done and stuff. So far, I've had confirmed 2 groups being a part of it, larger groups, so I was going to make a motion tonight about closing streets, but I think I want to follow up with Roger, as I was thinking a little bit more about planning, because there might be quite a few motorized groups this year. So I just want to make sure we have enough room to line them up, so I'm going to hold off on closing any streets till next meeting.
Well, what is the next meeting?
It's before the.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
It's the week before,
It's
so.
the Saturday after, no, it's.
parade's the
Saturday.
28th, and the meeting's the week before. So.
With, I put that one up that you gave me, Chris, the flyer. Did you put more up?
I gave the rest of them to,
Okay, because I was gonna say put one, he had asked me some places, I was thinking like Unimart might want one. I put one in up at the pub.
Okay.
Thought maybe Serrano's.
Yeah, I figured just hit like the spots where people go to eat and stuff.
Yeah, then Chris, I knew Chris had some, and I took one and hit the.
I think Paul Liddick was putting one at the Legion.
Yeah, Paul said he was putting one up.
Yep. And if anybody here would like to volunteer to help, that'd be wonderful, but besides that, that's all I got.
I'll give you Wyatt.
Thank you.
He's an expert.
He's good down below.
Okay.
The square.
That's all I got.
Of course, my main person, she's out, she have her baby.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay. So I was approached by the new theater group here. they would like to come up and their choir part and sing at Winterfest.
Great.
And I said, they're more than welcome to show up and do that. So, that's the next big event we have after the Halloween parade is the Winterfest and then New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve, almost everything's lined up there with the Lions Club, the DJ, and that's already done and taken care of, so. That's basically it right now.
Anything else? Anything for Mr. Williams?
Depends on
Move
what
on to
Next year.
personnel, legal, and IT.
The mayor's picnic.
I would like to make a motion to terminate a part-time, what's the word I want?
Public Works laborer.
Public Works laborer, effective immediately.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The only other item I had, we did meet this evening, we formalized Mr. Corrigan's, the manager's review. I think provided him some feedback, and he provided us some feedback as well. We're, if you're not aware, we're about 18 months into his employment. We did not effect a review at the 1-year mark, but we didn't want to let that lag any further. So his review has been completed in writing and is placed into his file. I also wanted to compliment Mr. Criley. As everyone is probably aware, there was a second fire on Sunday morning about 3 o'clock at the property at 706, not 630, Market Street. I want to give accolades to the fire department as well. They were returning from a controlled burn. It was dispatched as an unknown type fire or something outside, and came across the blue house there across from Susquehanna Apartments with flames shooting across the street. So they stopped and put fire out.
I was sleeping in Charlotte, North Carolina.
We were on scene for about 2.5 hours or so. I was there. I did send a text message to both Mr. Criley and Mr. Corrigan just to let them know what was going on. I didn't want to call them, wake them up, not thinking there was anything, because the electric meter had already been removed from that property following the March fire. And about 15 minutes later, Mr. Criley was standing beside me. So he came in and was there for about a half hour. I want to compliment him on that. There was nothing he needed to do. He just wanted to check in and make sure there's nothing that they needed from him. There's still electric hooked up to the house, but there's no meter base on the property. So we are confident it was not electrical nature of the fire. Beyond that, I just wanted to recognize him and also Chris on receiving such correspondence and borough business any time of day or night, weekends or weekdays. That's all I have on the personal legal IT at this point. Anything for me? Move on to public safety, Mr. Crawford.
I ended up missing the meeting because I ended up getting held over at work this month. However, I understand the majority of the discussion was on getting us current with some FEMA and FEMA requirements. Mr. Corrigan or Mr. Nace might be able to offer more on that. Is there anything really to report on that? Or?
No, just some forms we have to fill out and gathering some information.
This is all relative to what's called the National Incident Management System, or NIMS. It was implemented shortly after
9/11.
it was the hurricane, wasn't it?
No.
Katrina?
No, NIMS was in the works in early 2002.
Basically, it's a nationally consistent, and I brought this discussion up with Mr. Rapp, as the still manager, because there's recommendation, I can't call it a requirement, but recommendation by the federal and state government, the state has followed, FEMA has followed suit with FEMA, that municipalities adopt the NIMS program, and also that the municipal officials who may have any part in a structure responding to an incident or a disaster or a major natural disaster, man-made or natural disaster, be trained and certified to a predetermined level. I don't know who at this table or who in this room may have those certifications, but it's something that potentially could affect federal or state reimbursements through FEMA, and also reimbursement for disaster declaration declared by the state or federal government. So there will be more information to come. There's a lot of information online. If you're not aware or not familiar with it, I would recommend everyone at least be familiar. If you want to take the training, the first 3 levels or 4 levels are available online when it's in the classroom. The final 2 levels, which are a total of 40 hours of training, are miserable and in a classroom setting. They're not fun at all, and they're very, very dry material, but they are recommended for public officials who may be in that capacity, either an incident command or in an incident management perspective from an emergency operations center. Is that covered?
Do we have, I mean, it was brought up at the fire company meeting the other night, Carl asked us about that to come up with the public safety issue. Is the criteria there for who needs what certifications are recommended? That would-
It's somewhat generic. It basically says anyone who may be involved in, I think is almost the exact verbiage. But we got correspondence from the Boroughs Association probably a decade ago, indicating the mayor, the manager, members of council should have some certification, at least the awareness level, the basic level.
If that was part of the question was asking if we were still in compliance, the fire company end anyway, and my question right back was, what do we need to be in compliance? That's where I'm going with that. So if all that's figured out with all this, please send us what we need to.
It's all in an instant
we need
for
to be.
agencies, not for
Yeah.
government, but for agencies, it is pretty clear.
Okay.
Do you want to email it out to everyone on council?
I can do that.
Well, and
I think I did, but I can do
you
that.
may have, yeah, you did.
Okay.
Not Roger, I can print it for him.
Normally I send it to Chris and Chris prints it for Roger.
My box has been empty for a month.
Okay. I will verify that when we send it.
But then if you figure out there's something that the borough needs from us, outside of the 100, 200, 700, 800. If there's anything that anybody needs to have or whatever for the borough to achieve something with the NIM certification, let us know.
I would imagine that as an agency, you're probably in pretty good shape. That I don't know that we need anything from you, but I think for our officials sitting at this table and in the office, I think we're probably lacking in having for some time.
I'll try and take them as possible.
I have nothing.
Hey, well, while you're on that topic, has there been any discussion with the county about the new radio system with borough, with EMA within the borough for communications? Zero.
Not from here.
So, as of right now, the borough has no radio communications with Perry County whatsoever, or with the fire company, or with the EMS or police.
And I think the only communication we had prior to the new system was a portable radio or two that Paul would dust off when we had an incident.
Well, you had, years ago, you had the radio here.
There was a base station.
Yep, they did all that stuff, and I don't know why.
I don't know that there's anything allocated in the new system for emergency management. There used to be a local government frequency. I don't believe a frequency was licensed for local government purposes this time. So that may be something in the future, but I have not heard any discussion. We've got fire and police.
That might be a plan or a concern for municipalities to bring up to the county, because I think they're finding out real fast that their new system is almost outdated before they even start with, not improving it for where they thought they were going with extra channels and everything, but they're behind the 8 ball already with it. So, when you talk about having a natural disaster or anything like that, radio communications is going to be the ticket with unified command with your NIMS and everything else. And if the borough has no way to communicate with its employees, its EMA director, or anything with anybody else, they're even, the borough communicate with Penn Township, Wheatfield Township, whatever.
I do know Wheatfield has their own frequency license. I don't know if they still have it in the vehicles. And the county is keeping up all the low band licenses. They're not going to monitor the low band system, but we can use that system. I don't know if any of our vehicles even still have radios in them. But that as far as unit-to-unit conversation, and again, part of the unified system, if we're using emergency frequency, we would have police department, the fire department, EMS, in the same place that would have radio communication. So I guess I don't see that as a critical issue for the borough at this point.
Well, and like I said, it's not real critical, obviously, because it hasn't been used for a while. But there's gonna be a point in time when it's necessary. So.
I think we're all spoiled by having phone, either landline or cell phone service, but the reality is, in a major disaster, we're not going to have that.
And the chief makes a good point, because I can tell you that you know, I had an experience where we had a need for that. We had actually handheld radios that we used for our public works crew, and we gave them to the police and ambulance because we couldn't communicate in one of the blizzards, and it came in handy for an ambulance needed a plow to get someplace on an emergency call. So it definitely, Christie just mentioned to me, and I will call Rich Foltz and see what he tells us about
Well,
it.
you, just two things right here that hit you right off the bat, obviously blizzards we had and floods.
Yep.
You know, we've had them both, and could be a common occurrence, and you got those things that run right between the river and us that go down, that you could have a disaster at any minute. Yep.
Absolutely.
So,
Mhm.
I think one item that has been not discussed a whole lot, but is a little more active than probably ever before, is the ham radio level at the county. And I think the intention with that is to have the ham radio operators available for some of those communications. I don't know specifically the infrastructure that's in place, but our radio system, as you know, if we have an electric outage and backup generators don't last or don't work, we've gotten radio communication other than line of sight. Whereas the old system, you know, as long as the courthouse had power and we had power, we could communicate. Now, since everything's repeated, it's a very different structure. Anything else for public safety? Anything for public safety? Move on then to utility, street, and infrastructure, Mr. Kirkall.
We have two items for action. One is, how many additional streetlight arms was it, Chris?
2.
I guess I'm making the motion to purchase the 2 additional streetlight arms that we need. Now, this will coincide with what we previously approved for.
We actually, Mike ordered 2 more than what was authorized, and because council's authorization was specific, normally $35 worth of light bulbs, we would be coming to council for it, but your authorization was specific for the amount, so we wanted to have that amended. And
Yeah,
make
so
it right.
this will just amend, is it amending the previous one, or?
Bill? No, just
New
the
motion to,
new motion.
for the 2 streetlight arms.
They've already been purchased, right?
Yeah.
Just to ratify that.
To ratify those 2.
In the amount of $32.50.
Okay, that's the exact amount? All right, I forgot my packet, so I didn't have the exact amount.
We have a motion by Mr. Kirkhoff, a second by Ms. Young, to authorize the expenditure of $32.50 for the purchase of 2 additional mounting arms for the LED streetlights. Any further discussion? All those in favor give consent by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and the second thing I have, and I think everybody has it, it's a resolution, 2017-6. This will be selling our street signs, and we came up with, now this was discussion, were you there, Christie, for our meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, she was, yeah. You all know we are replacing the street signs. Let's get rid of them. There's an article in the paper this week about it. Well, this is how we're actually gonna do it. We're gonna sell them. We came up with $15 per sign for those deemed in good condition, and then $10 per sign for the other signs, which are bent signs.
Good condition,
Yeah.
$10.
So you might be
The
missing
one
some
side does
letters.
have better letters than the other, maybe you could put them together, or
Some are bent, but that was to be for, did we put a time frame on this, or is this just?
we're going to, if council approves this, we're going to have them available beginning next Monday, and we'll wrap up the sale, we said 3 weeks, because we're gonna have them down here spread out, and we need to make room for the council meeting.
And we're not just gonna throw them away. I said that next year, as Parks and Rec has things, I'll set up a table to try and sell them at something like that, just to, I don't know. People might like, if people aren't like taking to the idea, we can always, if we want to, just scrap them. Like, there's no,
People have been calling and asking if they could get them.
I'm assuming that partly because it was in the paper this week. But yeah, so I'm gonna.
There you go, Jim.
Yeah.
So is this like first, so show up Monday morning at 5, first come, first served kind of thing?
They keep
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you guys
I'm already not talk about that.
No, we don't
So
have
how
a way
can
to
you
process
pay?
cash anymore. We have to pay check or money,
You have to
or
write a check.
credit
or
card, we can take
no
a credit card
cards,
Yeah, we
with
can
the
do cards.
3% fee.
We can do cards.
Okay,
So everything but
but no cash.
Want to make a motion for the resolution?
Yep. I'll make that motion.
Second.
approve this resolution as presented.
The motion by Mr. Kirkhoff, a second by Mr. Williams to adopt resolution number 2017-6, a resolution of the Borough of Duncannon setting the procedure for disposing of old street signs. $15 per sign deemed in good condition, $10 per sign for all other signs. Council authorized the borough manager to determine the condition of the signs to be sold. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That begins at 8 a.m. Monday.
And the condition was basically set by the committee, and just, somebody has to look at them and say which meets what criteria, so.
Not on the yard sale.
Yeah.
Anything else under utilities, streets?
I have one other thing. We had our cleanup one Saturday. We filled the electronics containers.
What time did you fill it?
Actually, but I'd say, here's how it started. The day started really quickly. I got there at 7:30 and it was already a line out almost all the way to Market Street. People did not want to let me in to park my car to help. I had to like cut a car off to get in there. And we filled up very quickly. I mean, Chris, when you got there, a little while later, we were pretty full. We had
Probably
maybe
85%.
and then it was just dead. We had nobody else coming. We finally did have stragglers coming in and we filled it up. And we really filled it. We had to,
Two or three times we reopened it, rearranged it.
we ended up having to
Got
leave.
one or two more
Some of us had to
extras
leave because we kept saying yes when we really didn't have room. We were shoving stuff and pushing stuff in to get it in there. But yeah, so that's full. We ended up filling a whole dumpster and then about maybe a third of another dumpster. So we didn't have as much trash this time as we had last time.
Were there any electronics from outside of the borough, or was the borough?
Yeah, Bob, Paul didn't
There
turn
were,
it
there
Yeah, but I didn't
definitely
know
were
what- he
some,
turned in the
but
listing, but it's
it was not
Yeah.
we thought that there'd be a secondary rush at 10 o'clock.
Right.
That did not happen. So it is primarily borough televisions.
Yeah, I want to say it was maybe $120
Or,
worth
yeah,
at most, and 60 of that was one guy who told us, I don't live in the borough, but my business is in the borough, and then he showed us his address, and we explained to him that having a Duncannon mailing address doesn't mean you live in the borough, your business is not in the borough, and so he paid for his stuff, and he was the only one who argued at all.
yeah, I don't know, I don't even know, it was not many in Penn Township. But no, the crew did well, there was a lot of us there, and we could not get Mike Riley to leave, even though he wasn't supposed to be there, so.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Anything for utilities, streets, and infrastructure for Mr. Kirkhoff? Move on then to revitalization and development, Mr. Adams.
So, we've spent a lot of time on chickens, and I don't think we can debate it anymore. So we're gonna go ahead and get something drafted to get from council by the next meeting. The opinion in the borough is pretty split. The only people that seem to be for it are the people who own chickens. And the only people that seem to be against it are people who just don't want the chickens. There's nobody coming to the committee meeting saying, I want to have chickens and I currently don't have them. Something to keep in mind. But we're gonna go ahead and get something in front of council so we start, all this time we spent on it isn't for nothing. Once the chickens ordinance is on the table for debate, the committee is gonna move on to a couple other things, like tonight I've pretty much picked up my plate for the next 2 years. And I'll have some more stuff to add besides the chickens. My goal is with the ordinance to just I wanted to get in front of the whole council with the recommendations we've made from the committee, just to see if it's, get some debate going on it, because we've heard from the residents a lot, and that's good, but it's time to bring it up to the table. So we'll have that drafted by next council meeting for everyone to look at. And that's all I got.
Anything for Mr. Adams?
DJ, I was just thinking, because we were talking tonight about the Shade Tree Commission. Wasn't Sharon Morrell,
It wasn't a shade tree commission per se, but there was a subcommittee kind of established within the revitalization committee in 2016 that was to look into the tree vitalization project, which is a partially state-funded project to kind of responsibly plant some trees in the sidewalks and more build-up areas of the community.
If we get her contact information to Chris for help with that.
Yeah, bring it on.
Phone number?
And my number?
No.
Oh, do I want to write
You
down?
don't have to do it now, but I just make the connection.
Anything for Mr. Adams? Move on to unfinished business. Any unfinished business?
I have a question.
Mr. Epple?
Earlier in the year, did we authorize a timber cut?
Yes.
What does that stay at the present time?
Last I recall, Matt was coming back to us with a proposal, and I don't think he's come back with that yet. I've not heard from him since he was in and made his presentation.
We contact him and find out what the problem is.
I'll check with him.
All right.
But I will also remind you too that the option part of the easement proposal is predicated on that $100,000 being in lieu of us doing a cut this year. So that is a factor in that whole thing as well, that you guys have to weigh and determine.
Why is that $100,000 that they're offering? We're still in control of that out there. I'm not getting a real good vibe on this, that already they're controlling what we're doing with our,
They're not controlling anything. They're offering us $100,000 as part of an option to not do a cut.
Well, yeah, it would be to not do two
But it-
cuts, because it would be
2
for
years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Oh, was it 2 years? Because it was 3 years in the original thing he gave us.
What I
Yes.
saw was 2, but
Okay, maybe he
Maybe it's
modified it.
drifting
Originally
around,
was
3 years.
He might have changed, maybe he changed it after he came, because we were talked about how we were doing it every 2 years.
Lot of feedback, right?
But maybe, because he originally was 3 years, or until they deemed it. I think that's how it was. I think it was 3 years or until we are deemed earlier, like they could give us permission earlier, but, okay, so you
And I
saw
still
it.
think we should go ahead with a timber cut because we have not done no agreement with them to do anything.
that's my position, that all of a sudden here now, we're being told what we can do. We haven't signed any paperwork yet.
Well, why don't we see what the proposal is, and if it's better for us to go with the cut, then I feel
we've not
it's
agreed
better
to
for us
to the conservation easement or the option.
No.
And we've not agreed to the cut, although it has been authorized
Yeah,
by council, it certainly has been. And we have not come to terms, okay? You know, contract
I'd like
and
to
so
see,
forth.
yeah, I'd like to see the terms for
So
that too.
basically,
So if we could
Compare the
the
two.
way this is gonna come, it's gonna come to you for a decision on the whole ball of wax. Here's the way it can go, or here's the way it can go. You have to decide. And our goal, Chris, what did we tell Josh that when we wanted this in order for the?
For the finance committee next month so that they could bring it to
Yeah,
council.
so this is coming up quickly. We will make contact with Matt
Miser.
thank you. And make sure that we haven't missed something, make sure that he's on board so that you can, you can make this decision with as many pieces as possible to put together, okay? We haven't precluded because we have not agreed to the option. We are talking to the conservation people about terms and conditions and negotiating, but obviously, I don't make that decision. I give my review and I give my opinion about where we end up. You're gonna have to then make a decision which way the borough ought to go. That's gonna be council's decision.
I know we authorized the timber
You
cut,
did.
and he was supposed to put it out for bid, and that's why I haven't seen it advertised for bid anywhere.
No, certainly not.
I seem to remember Matt's presentation, he was gonna get back to us with more information or something, that was in the spring.
Yeah, it was
I thought
bouncing
he was gonna
around.
bring the bids back.
No, he hasn't,
For
that
bids,
hasn't,
but it was
we
gonna
haven't
be a
not,
late fall cut.
yeah, we haven't entered into any sort of written agreement with him, which would be necessary in order for us to authorize him to go ahead and let that, okay? So, we'll see where we're at with that, hopefully, maybe, we can even have his proposal in writing and with my approval of as to legality and so forth. There are some questions about bidding that I have to get over on this, so, but that's fine, I'll deal with that.
I think having both kind of countering documents at the same time
Yeah.
would be a good process to
Yeah,
have.
I think that's, you need to make this in big picture, not, hey, cut this year and do the option for 2 or 3 years, or, you know, we have to look at it, which way are we gonna go? And that's a legitimate question, subject to, you know, your take on it, so.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. Any other unfinished business? Any new business? We do have a second public comment session. If anyone in the room would like to provide 3 minutes of public comment.
Yeah.
Mr. Wolfersberger.
You just authorized spending money in here, can I go ahead and order some parts and pieces?
I would like you to
Tomorrow?
collaborate with Chris.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Because I can make a phone call at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, and get zero here by probably Friday.
Coordinate with Chris.
Just asking.
Any other public comment?
I have one.
Mr. Warner.
The intersection of, is it Rachel and Market Street? Is there anything that can be done there with the curb and sidewalk ordinance? And I know that property was on the agendas a few times for development, quite a stir with the parking and everything that was there.
Which corner? The north side or the south?
North side,
Okay.
where all the mud goes out onto the road when it rains.
That's the one I haven't cleaned up here not too long.
And you clean it up and it rains and the mud goes right back out on the road.
It's a hazard for motorcycles too.
And I do notice that there is a drain there, but the water seems to puddle around the drain.
And the reason for that is because the top coat of asphalt was never done in 2014,
Right.
13, sewer project, sewer line replacement.
But the one thing that just comes to my mind is why hasn't there been and isn't there sidewalks and curbs on that side of the street?
You don't have to replace that one.
There are a lot of, my home is one of them, but there are a lot of areas in town. I don't know what the curb and sidewalk ordinance says and what the requirements are and how retroactive that can be. I don't know. Do you know anything specific to that, Chris?
I'd have to check.
You can take a look at it.
That was, if you remember, when they did the sewer project in there, that corner was fixed up, seeded,
Yeah, it's
and then
all
grass was growing, it was beautiful until the owner across the street.
redid that house.
And then they started parking there, parking all their equipment there, business equipment and everything, and tore it up.
Yeah, it's just been, I mean, it's
You
just
know?
within the year that it started
Yes.
getting like that.
Yes.
I mean, obviously without a curb and sidewalk there forever, it always wasn't that issue. But now that it's all dirt and mud,
Yeah.
as soon as it rains, it just washes it right out on there. And the puddle gets muddy, everybody drives through it and it just goes all over the place.
And if that's residential, why is there business equipment permitted to park in there?
I'm sure the gray area there is because of the railroad.
Well, I don't think you're authorized to run a business.
Right, they can be,
Yeah, not
it's a
about
vehicle.
running a
You
business.
can park the vehicle as long as it's licensed
Parking
and
area.
insured.
It's a public, it's a public parking area potentially, as long as, I think, licensed and insured or licensed and registered.
Registered and
And I
insured.
guess, as we know, the owner of the sled works owns that, both sides there, right?
No, there's,
No.
Or was
there's,
there something come into play out of that?
there was
There's two
survey
different
stakes put in out there, that's been an ongoing
Yeah.
debate. It calmed down a little bit over the last year or so, I guess,
But
but
he's right. Jimmy Rosen owns.
he has, it's a diminishing piece as you cross Rachel Street.
If you come on this side of the bush and run the whole way up to Nancy's property, from that bush to Market Street is Jimmy Rosen. From the bush to the alley is ours. And then where Nancy's property line is. Yes.
And then that was my question to Chris one day, if and when anybody ever develops, does any improvements to any of those properties up along, could it be enforced that they put sidewalks and curbs in?
Probably.
That's-
We should have
that's
been
why I was-
actually done when they redid the road originally, right after we fought them for all them years because of the bypass, and they dumped the road on us, and the state came in there, and they put curbs, and we had to put sidewalks in, and they gave us a bill for those curbs. So at that time, that should have all been done, and Jimmy Rosen and Nancy should have got a bill, and there should be curbs on that side of the street.
You're predating me.
I'll tell you what happened.
1965, the first curbs and sidewalks went in, and that was a sewer issue. When the sewer went through town, you had the curb and sidewalk in front of your residence. There's no sewer on that side of the street.
Yeah.
That's why that was left go. Up at your end, there was none at that time on out through. Now, under the development plans out there, that the developer had to do, that the council said, if you're gonna do this, this is what you're gonna do. The same as any other developer wants to do anything. That's why there's no curb up there.
There are a lot of areas, I mean, not just there, I mentioned that's why I wasn't trying to hide it, but there are a lot of areas in town where there isn't curb adjacent to the street, on hills, you know, it's not at all consistent. I know that was something even as far back as when Dan Rapp was the manager, he wanted to pursue, and nothing came of it, so I'm not sure if we didn't have any legal standing to do anything, or, you know, if it was a financial issue, or what the case may have been. I don't know how the ordinance reads.
Reluctance to put the burden on the property owner.
Yes.
We've had this discussion at the Streets and Infrastructure Utilities Committee meeting. I mean, probably every time we've talked about streets, me and Chris have talked about this too, because you'd like to have the curbs there, but you also recognize that people already are having trouble affording to fix up their house, let alone put in curbs and sidewalks, so.
We've got existing curbs and sidewalks.
They just put them in, we got a
Not
bill
when
for
the
'em.
sewer went in, you didn't have any say. Now, you would have say. The curb was part of the sewer project.
I thought that was that big state project.
No, this first original curbing was put in with the sewer project, the whole way through town.
Curbs were all replaced and I got a bill for it.
Yes.
It's $7.50
When the
a
state
foot.
signed the road over, but originally, and every homeowner, only reason I know is because I have grandparents that were up there, paid $2.10 a month to the borough for their curb and sidewalk until it was paid off.
Oh, they financed it?
Yes,
Oh.
the borough financed it.
$2.10, okay.
Yes,
Well, last time they did, because they just gave us a bill,
yes,
$7.50 a foot.
yep, I can believe that.
Well,
We didn't have any say, they just put them in.
my property was technically part of that development. When I called them, I read the development stuff, and I called them and said, where's my sidewalk? They said, all right, you're no longer part of the development.
You were too
So-
close to Craig.
I got no sidewalk, and now I'm not in the development.
They gave him a break.
You were too close to Craig.
Yes.
That was the problem.
Does the sidewalk come across the property to your north?
No, because it's vacant.
Right.
But
The
the
curb's
one
there.
right after that, there
The
is.
curb's all
Curb's
there.
The
Yeah.
curb's there,
Okay.
yes.
Chris, if you can just give us, maybe the streets committee, just some information on where that is, and if it is a reluctance, you know,
That's what they said.
to put it on the homeowner, I understand that, but I don't know if there's more to it or not, just.
I would have no idea what the past, I mean, that's common everywhere you go, it's not just here. I mean, my neighborhood, my kids have to walk to school in the street, and it's supposed to be a walkable school district, and there's no sidewalks, because they didn't have, the council, when they had their ordinance, didn't want to make people put them in that already were built.
And maybe it's something the way it's written, just for new construction, and the old construction.
I'll look at the ordinance and review it with you and see what we
It's
can
only
do.
on one side the whole way up, like it switches sides, but it's on the odd side coming up 200, 300, 400.
It's on this side, all the way from down.
And then at the
split.
sled works, it switches,
It switches.
it's only on one side,
Yeah.
the whole way.
Like it's from.
From Broadway
his
down.
parents'
You
house.
still have a curb
Yeah.
on the opposite side of the street, there's still a curb.
Yeah, you have a curb at the sled
There's
works.
no
but
side, no, on
on the
the,
post office, it's all on that side, and then it switches after the sled works to the other side.
When we do any major street paving projects, the recommendation will be that we put in curbs, because that will extend the life of our streets. You know, and make sure that the runoff gets into the storm drains. Eventually, we'll probably have to do that because of MS4 once we're covered by that too. That'll probably be a requirement, but we definitely want to look at that.
There are sidewalks on both sides of Market Street, from the south end of town, all the way through.
The blinker light.
The blinker light, because that's where you drop down along Market Street, there's no sidewalk down there. And then it only is on the non-river side, all the way past.
It's all the way to the sled works, and right after the sled works, it's probably about the exact same point.
but on the opposite side of the street where there's no sidewalk, there's still curb.
Curves, sidewalk, parking lot.
Up until the sled works, Well, yeah, it's really just that.
That's the only part, that's the only part of Market Street from the Rachel Street north on the west side that doesn't have curb.
Yep.
Or barrier. Doesn't have some sort of barrier.
Now, when we repave Market Street, would behoove us to put curbing in there.
For sure. It would help the life of the road.
Right, absolutely,
Yeah, that's what Chris just said.
yeah. Then, let me ask you this, whenever you do that, are you gonna, because a lot of people park on the other side of the road that live on the riverside. So could you, or would you want to, across from each house where there's a driveway, put a driveway.
I think
It's way too soon to
Yeah, I think
to
the
plan that way.
engineer would make a recommendation. We can't look at that
It'd be
now.
something that would make a barrier, you could do
Just-
that all the way up.
Yeah, right. Just a thought whenever if you're thinking about that.
Any other public comment? Mr. Groves?
This is for Bessie.
Go
Elm Street, still on your list?
It's been
Bolts,
dropped.
bolts
We
for
do
Marcus,
have-
It's,
bolts for Marcus Street, since we've got floods coming. Anything, is that still on the list?
Yep, we have gone up through, you did not see a copy of the report. We have half of Water Street, we got the lids open, checked into, so what's paved? You drive down, you're gonna see that we got everything opened up there. I think there might be 2 that we gotta break,
Great.
torch off,
Mhm.
but we're up to the grass area.
Good.
So now we gotta continue the grass. We did get the adhesive to get down into the manholes, to get down there and see if we can temporarily seal some of them up. Rain events and other projects have not allowed us to get in there, but we do have the epoxy that we're gonna try and get in there and see if we can Band-Aid the I&I issues for what we know is leaking. So we are making steps forward, and as soon as time and weather permit, we're gonna be addressing that too, so.
And then finally, the motor control center in the main building is where you turn your fan on for your,
Thank you.
there it says right on
I found it after
They
I
did.
called, we went and looked around.
okay. Well, I thought it was in the other building.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
Any more public comment?
Just one, I would like to say that our streets aren't in that bad of shape. I've seen some comments on this at Duncannon, which is probably, all they do is bitch about stuff anyhow. But our streets are not in that bad of shape. They really aren't. Go to Newport and drive down some of those streets in Newport. I was in a Mustang a couple of weeks ago and I bottomed out, and now I only got 3 inches of clearance, but they got potholes in some of their back alleys and stuff that are, I just about lost a car. So,
I would agree with you at this point, our roads aren't in that bad of shape.
right, right. And because I know there's been a lot of comments, our roads are awful, blah, 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 well, and I've had comments about, I've heard over the years how awful this town is, it's fallen down. And all. I've seen more younger people walking around this town the last year or so, moving into town. I've seen all kind of roofs, siding go on in the last year or 2 around here. People are fixing their places up. And I think it's just a matter of this borough setting an example also and keeping things cleaned up, keeping the parks nice. And that was one of the big things that kept Apple Tree Alley from going through, because people were afraid the borough was not going to keep that up. Plus it was a Cadillac project anyhow. But that being said, I think we have a pretty good town here, and I think some of the stuff you see on the internet and some of the stuff you see on things that people are putting out, like about the chickens and the roads, and people were bitching about why we spending money on road signs, and that was the one thing I never commented on that stuff, but I did comment, have my wife comment, about the road signs being a safety issue for emergency vehicles and stuff like that. I had a sign on Rachel Street for a couple of years. So if it's on the internet, it isn't necessarily true. So.
Amen.
I get a little tired of some of that, and I wish somebody was here. I was gonna talk to somebody about that.
The people that comment on the internet typically don't show up here.
Yes, well, they didn't tonight because,
I invited them though.
okay, well, very good. Very good.
They also
I just
don't
want to
read
put a
articles.
positive spin on some things here at the end of the day.
Thank you.
I like it.
What you guys don't see is I normally invite them personally as well. So I invite them publicly, but I also invite them personally.
Everyone's invited.
Very good.
Any other public comment?
Motion adjourned.
Second.